Hey, Thomas, welcome again to this exciting podcast series. How are you today?
I'm great, Dharam, and thanks for setting up these webinars. And I'm really keen to discuss today with you about stakeholders and sponsors.
So, thank you for this again. Giving me or giving this audience your valuable time, and it's always exciting to have you and discuss with you and learn from you in this whole process. So, can you not realize, we are also learning because to come to this proper session, we need to prepare and we need to think, and that's where the learning happens. So today's topic is a very interesting one, and you may ask us, what? Okay, the topic is the paradox of project sponsors to stakeholders. First of all, let's talk about what is stakeholder, what is sponsor, what is what we're talking here.
Yeah.
What do you think about the stakeholders? Who are the stakeholders on a project level?
Well, on a project level or even on other levels, stakeholders are either humans or groups of humans or organizations. So the difference, some people have a difficulty grasping, what is the difference between a group and an organization? Well, a group is just a bunch of people who are coming together and all of them might have different interests, but they are grouped together for some reason, An organization is something that is established and can have an agent, who is representing the organization to another thing. So in Germany, we have a lot of companies with working councils, So, and maybe the working council is a group of people of 20 people from different departments, but they are represented by one person, And if I'm in my project, I'm going to talk with the working council. I'm talking with one of these representatives, and so he will take my promises, my water commitments, my questions, and he bring it back to the organization. The organization will decide according to the governance model, and then okay, let's go that. It's much more difficult with a group because all these groups, there might be a group of 10 and one guy says, no, I don't agree. And then they have no governance model, no structure, how to decide something. So it's important to understand if you have a group of people or have an organization at hand, because it's easier to deal with organization in many cases. And so, and these humans, groups or organizations are related to the project, in that they are affected by the project. So the project is doing something, some work, has some output, that is really affecting them, or they perceive to be affected, or they affect the project, because they are expected to provide some input or expected to do this and that, and they don't want to do that. It's not always only the stakeholders that are providing something positive or are able to provide something positive. Could be some stakeholders who are negative towards the project, who fight the project, and then these are most important to deal with. I have seen a lot of projects where you have internal politics, and let's say one department is doing one project and the other department lead, says, I don't want this is disturbing me, so it's not what I think we should spend our company money on. And then he's fighting this project. And and you, as a project manager, you cannot just say, okay, I ignore him or her, but you have to make sure that you handle him. And these are the most important stakeholders to handle, and how do I, as a project manager, very small in the hierarchy, handle somebody very big in the department leads in a different line of reporting? Well, that's why project management is about influencing people without power.
Exactly.
And that's, you also have to influence these stakeholders that are over your own level. Yeah. So this is groups, typically groups, if you have a project in construction, the public or the citizens of the neighbors, neighborhood. They are not organized. They don't have a governance model. They are not represented by people normally. but they can, if one of these guys is suing you, you have enough trouble. And even if the 30 others are happy with your project, and they are not, probably. The users, if you're developing a software, a system, and they go out to 3,000 users in the company, which are spread across the globe at different locations. There is no representation from the users, but the user in Sri Lanka may not like your user interface, and so he will fight it, and then maybe the whole thing goes down the hill. So this is a stakeholder groups that even management of the organization, all of management, the management levels, the department leads, and the finance people, and the HR people, they are all a group of people who have different interests, but can affect your project. And now you see, it's a whole world. You can,
exactly.
and it can be quite complex.
Yeah. So look, you have covered everybody within the stakeholder group, the project manager stakeholder group. Whether we're talking the C-level people, your executive board, your vendors, your media, if you're interacting with the media, your project team, PMO team, and and who getting the benefit out of this, who's getting negative benefit out of this,
Yeah.
and even the I've seen when I saw this first time in the standard for program management, they even talking competitors, your stakeholder. What do you mean, competitor? Competitor is a negative benefit, negative stakeholder for you.
Exactly.
And if they do something, let's say you're working on a product which is great, you think it's a great, and you're investing money. Suddenly you realize your competitor also doing the same thing, and they are doing better, and they're cheaper than yours. Then your benefits are gone.
Exactly.
So it is in your best interest to keep an eye on them, to see, okay, this is what happened. Maybe we have a go-to-market approach differently, or maybe we have to improve our product or service to make it more appealing.
Yeah. That's normally you have to distinguish, between the stakeholders who are positive towards your project, and it's normally one particular stakeholder which is important and it is positive. It's a sponsor, That's the one business guy who asks you to take over responsibility to execute this project on his behalf, and he's acting on behalf of the organization who is doing the project, who is providing the funding, and who is providing the authority that you can proceed. So imagine you are employed, and you start working on something, and then maybe somebody comes and says, "What are you doing there? Who gave you the authorization to spend your working time on this activity?"
Yeah.
And then if you have a sponsor who asks you to do that and sign the charter, that is where my authorization comes from to work on that project. That's the importance of the charter. The charter is the birth certificate of the project. When the organization acknowledge, okay, we will do this, and they are represented by the sponsor, who is part of the governance model of the organization, and by the project manager, which is you, possibly, and then the sponsor asks you and assigns you to that project, and then you can start working, And normally in the charter, you have some constraints also documented. But I have seen charters consisting out of less than one page, because that's all you need. You need the authorization by the sponsor representing the organization to give you the authority to do that project. And then somewhere that project must be described, and normally you have the key data, like what is the budget limit, how much money are they thinking about, what are the key milestones or the end date, and what is this about? Do you want a ship or do you want a car? Like that. And these are different things. And then I would warn against blowing up the charter too much, because it takes a lot of time to blow it up and to make it predictable. But the planning in a project or in a program is where you detail the charter's premises, where you really come up with some plans, and normally these plans are living documents, so they change through the life cycle of the program or the project, and you need to get approvals for a lot of stuff anyhow, but don't overload the charter. That's my point.
So yes, it's actually a good point. One is, yes, sponsor has to get approval and authorization for the charter from the executive board or funding organization who will fund it. So the charter, as you correctly mentioned, is actually a very short document. It has high level information. So generally this is done as part of the initial phase of the project. When the project was initiated and talked about, this is the basic information. You just have to have enough information that will get you through the approval. And why we have enough information? If you want to put extra information, detailed information, for example, if your project is, they don't like the justification, they may say, you know what, we're not approving this project.
Right.
And in that, yes, you wasted some time. But if you have spent more time and money, let's say you did detailed analysis and detailed work, that also won't be. That what you need in the charter is just enough information that will take you to the next stage. That's it.
Correct. And some companies who are working in a very, let's say, stage gate way, they build the content of the scope of a project. I've seen that many of these use the document like a business case,
Yeah.
to put more details in the requirements and the constraints and the solutions and the risk and whatever. And the business case is approved, taken and can be presented. Business case could be a document of 300 pages if you want,
Yeah.
But it normally is a document of, let's say, 20, 30 pages. I've seen that. And this is given to the decision body, which might be a portfolio board or whatever, some gathering, some meeting of decision makers of the organization. And in the end, they say yes, or they say no, or they say no, but change this and maybe then it will be approved, which is a bad situation anyhow.
So in the project charter, we start talking about this. So we're going to identify, when the initial stage, we need to identify a few important or key stakeholders, and also the sponsor, who is going to sponsor this program. And yes, we talked about the stakeholder. We have various types of stakeholder, positive, negative. But the sponsor is the one, we need to understand what is the role, who is going to play this role, and what is the arrangement we have with this sponsor. Is it one sponsor, multiple sponsors, or this sponsor is representing multiple sponsors? It can happen that, let's say you talked about, if you talk about Olympic Games, various sponsors pouring money to this whole initiative, and but as part of the steering committee, one person representing all the stakeholders, all these sponsors. He or she is going to be the voice of these sponsors, and he or she is going to be the voice of the project. So it's a kind of a bridge between the group of sponsors and the project, the kind of keeping them informed.
Right. So I've seen group of sponsors also in a hierarchy, so that you have, let's say, you have a program. A program consists of several projects, and then you might have a program sponsor who is in charge overall. And in many cases, if that's, let's say, a company transformation, digital transformation, or whatever, this might be as high as a C-suite level, a CEO, whatever, CFO. I've seen everything, and then the individual projects under this program, like change our on-premises data center to cloud or whatever, if that is a project under this digitalization transformation, then this could have a different sponsor. So there will be a hierarchy, a group of sponsors within that project. As an example, if I look at one project, though, I normally have one sponsor who is hopefully the business owner of this area who wants this project done, like the HR leader who says, I want to install this SAP HR application. and then he's a sponsor for that, and he asks for that. He provides, in the end, he provides funding, not maybe out of his budget, but maybe he can get some funding from elsewhere, and help that project to do that. And he will give the charter to the project manager to do that. And in situations where you have clients, where you have external entities you're working for, your project. I worked for IBM for 31 years. It was my typical situation that I was asked to implement something on behalf of a client. And then, sometimes it was confusing because the client wanted something and they wanted that project done, but the client never was a sponsor, because the sponsor has to come out of my organization, because I'm not accountable to the client, as Thomas Walenta, as project manager. I'm accountable to my sponsor. And the relationship between client and my organization is a contractual relationship, and the contract owners is normally not me as project manager, but are the two sponsors. Well, the client executive and the sponsor. They normally sign the contract and they applaud and with the picture taken and put in the newsletter. But the client executive is an important stakeholder, and he has a lot of good requirements that I better listen to and react to. But he is not the sponsor of my project. That's the guy in my organization, and that's also important. I had one good thing when the client wanted something. We had a contract with the client, and then the sponsor in my organization asked me to kill the project. And then that's when you as a project manager somehow say, okay, but the client, I want to satisfy the client, but on the other hand, my sponsor tells me, please kill the project because it's no longer profitable, whatever, because it's not strategic. But I'm employed by my organization, and my organization asked me to do the project, and so there can be gaps between what the client wants and what the sponsor is wanting from me.
Exactly. So when we talk about sponsor, and we have seen the PMBOK and the Standard for Program Management, and that, I know that. So actually, these books are the standards are talking heavily about the various roles, of course, stakeholders and also sponsor. In the latest Standard for Program Management, there's a chapter called Governance. Within that, they actually spend enough time, enough information is provided about the role of course, various roles, but the important role as a sponsor. So the sponsor is, according to the books we have seen, is sponsor is the final authority in the program, ultimate, he's the champion of the program, and who makes the program, provide the required funding, make the investment decisions, and ensure the benefits are realized, and deliver to the beneficiaries, of course, with the help of a project manager or program manager. And even there's a negative benefit. Time to time we see that, hey, there are some, while we're doing this great thing, but there is an impact to some stakeholders. We can talk about that. And at the same time, the sponsor is the one who is the senior manager, may have to take responsibility of, how to remove, the negatively impacted stakeholder getting, influence, how to minimize the impact of that by talking to HR team, maybe legal team or something with the help of project manager altogether.
Right. So you're saying there are stakeholders who get negative benefits or disbenefits, and that's almost in every project I've done. There are people who, if the project is done well, either they lose their jobs or their job roles or whatever. There are people who are negatively affected, and that's called disbenefits. And the business case should reflect this. Should say, okay, we have benefits for the organization and disbenefits for them, and there's also some money we have to pay for, and we only do that if the balance is right for the organization who wants that. And in that respect, I see the sponsor as the only stakeholder who always has a positive benefit from it. All other stakeholders could have disbenefits, All other stakeholders, either they have to fund the stuff, from the outside, or they are fired or whatever. They might be negatively affected. Well, if all of them are negatively affected and only the sponsor gets some positive benefits, that's not a viable business case for the organization. It would not be approved by a steering committee. So the balance has to be towards the positive end, if you sum it all up. But the sponsor always wins.
Yeah, sponsor is the one who has been given authority by the organization to deliver those benefits and steward this, and handling this negative benefit in the most effective way. You sponsor is the final authority. So and the bucks and the buck stops with the sponsor.
Exactly.
So many times when I'm working with my PgMP student and project manager PMP student, they actually think that the biggest role played by them is the project manager, program manager. Of course, you play a very important role, but the sponsor is the ultimate authority within the project.
Yeah.
When the project is successful and a failure, of course, successful is always the sponsor will take the responsibility. Hey, I did everything. Failure because of the project manager.
Well, I managed my first PMO for a insurance company in Cologne, which is a big German city, and so it was 600 people in that company, and I was in charge of the PMO and installing project management. And at one point of time, we understood that we have to do some alignment, some training for all the people who are sponsors for projects, because these guys were business owners, department leads, whatever, and they acted in different ways. So it was not predictable. If you get this sponsor, what is he doing? Is he supporting you? Is he fighting you? Whatever, is he unfriendly? So we brought them together. It was about 10, 12 people, and we brought in from the US a facilitator with some content, and we had a 2-day workshop with them, which was very fruitful because they agreed on how they want to see the role of the sponsor in this organization from now on. And what I really saw in this meeting is, some of them did know about some details of project management, PMBOK, whatever, and most of them not. They were not aware of project management. So this, they were, let's say, greenfield, and the other were brownfield. So the point is, you have to bring them together and to have a new kind of playing ground that they built there. So the point is here, aligning them is important, and to understand, gain a common understanding is important. And then, what happens is that the charter is better understood, and it's better understood when you report which kind of project all projects have the same basic understanding on that role. Yeah.
Exactly. And, it's a very important role the sponsor is playing. At the same time, the qualification of a sponsor is very, very important. He is going to play, she or she is going to play a leadership role, and directing the project manager team to and securing those benefits. So having a right sponsor, right person to lead the project and program can make or break a program itself.
Well, and I found that people coming out of a career as project manager and then getting into a position of being a department lead and becoming sponsor for their projects, that they tend to do not a good job, because they don't they understand project management, and maybe that somehow brings them to micromanage and not delegate correctly, but they don't understand the role of the sponsor correctly. So that's why I talked before about the brownfield guys. They think they know what project management is, and they expect it, but they push it through, and that's the totally wrong thing, So what you really have to do as a sponsor, you have first, You have to understand that you are, in the end, accountable for that project, So you have, therefore, to make sure that everything is prepared for that project. You have the right staffing, the right project manager, the right charter, you have the right funding. That's all your responsibility, and and accountability in the end. What is the project manager and the team doing? And then you have the responsibility clearly to support the project. So the project has inputs from the organization, needs resources or needs some other stuff, and has outputs to the organization, because creating a product that is used by the organization, be it a software or something, and the project manager is often not in the position to convince the organization to use the product. So change management, talk about change management. And then the sponsor is per default the guy who is ensure that other things happen within the organizations to be prepared for the project output, project outcome even, And the third step, so I said the accountability, support the project within the context of the organization. And the third point is, build a relationship with the project manager, a positive relationship, and support him or her, and make sure, every project manager has gaps in his capabilities, and support them, and maybe help them with a mentor, maybe help them with a coach to close some skill gaps, maybe do other stuff, but you have to take care about him. And all of this is not done by 1 hour in a month, So maybe you are not. I've seen people sponsoring 30 projects. I say you can't do that, because you have a job as a department lead in operations, and then you are a sponsor for 30 projects. You are not in the position to do that, So what I, as a project manager, did very often, told the sponsor, you are a great guy, but you are not my sponsor, So please take care that I get a sponsor. And I want to talk to him at least once a week, and I want to build a relationship with him. So not only talk in an official meeting, in a personal interaction. That's very important, that you build this relationship. And it only can be built if you have a sponsor up high there in the hierarchy, and he's this guy. In Germany, it's working well, because we don't have this let's say authority fear so much than others. But go to India, if you have 3-4 hierarchies between the project manager and the sponsor, there is no way you can build a partnership here and a relationship. So then, you have to ask this guy, okay, please assign somebody lower in the hierarchy to the project as an acting sponsor. You might be the nominated sponsor somewhere, and that's good, because you have the power, but you have an acting sponsor who at least can spend 1, 2, 3 hours a week, and then he's also better to support the project.
And provide the guidance and the support.
Yep.
And whenever there's escalation by the project manager, it comes to the steering committee, and you are the final authority to make the final decision. So yes, you as a sponsor, you have a huge responsibility to make your projects a success or a failure. If you don't spend energy, you have a 30 project and you have operations, you have SLAs, KPIs, all things to worry about, then how would you give enough time to the project manager? If the project failed, you just blame the project manager. Hey, this project manager is rubbish. You don't know how to do things. And the problem is you didn't give enough guidance, direction,
exactly,
required support. So, it's not only blame game. It's about understanding how much really can I handle as a sponsor, and can I support these project programs going on, multi-million dollars of going into this.
Yes.
And you correctly said, identify if we cannot handle the role, and then identify somebody who is maybe your team manager or somebody team junior to you, and let them handle, and you can still be final authority, making the signing the document and giving that kind of thing. You can still play the role.
Yeah, and also if you talk to a steering committee with executives, the language is different, and you have, as a project manager, to learn how to talk to these guys and then what to do, what not to do. So a good symptom, if I go into an organization and see if sponsorship is working. So if project managers are afraid of going to the steering committee and presenting in a monthly status, and if they really get sick around that and are stressed around that, then I know the sponsorship is not a good capability in this organization. So I once had a case when the project manager of the large project, he spent 50% of his monthly time preparing for a steering committee. So he was so afraid of going there. He wanted to make absolutely sure he has no gaps and he can answer every question. And I say, this is overkill.
Exactly. They're not focusing on the project rather than they're trying to please you, providing the information. And yes, information important for you, but let them do the job as well. And you provide them, okay, that's fine. I was running one project for HP and the time was critical, very important. Within 7 months, we need to have 2 data centers, cloud data centers up and running, fully connected in 7 months. And kind of impossible given that, so much devices and everything. And I told my sponsor, hey, look, if you want me to follow full project management and what I love to talk, I think it's too difficult. But if you give me the freedom, then let me don't worry about the schedule and risk and I love talking that kind of thing as well. Yeah. He said, Dharam, I know you know the project management, program management, but what we are looking for is the result. We need to have these 2 data centers up and running by this time because as HP we have sold these services to number of top tier companies. And if we can't transition them by June of this year, then we don't have a good reputation. So sometimes you need that kind of flexibility as a project manager and support from your sponsor. Look, don't worry about this. We love talking about all these things, but go ahead. And you have my support. I will work with the senior stakeholders. You just focus on getting the things done.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So, Thomas, as and we talked about sponsor and what he or she should be doing, but as a project manager, what they can do to be ready to work with various types of stakeholders. Of course, we talk about that. Identifying your stakeholder as early as possible and put them into the stakeholder register. There are a few things we can talk about: analyzing them, prioritizing them, using some various tech tools techniques mentioned by PMI. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I think the importance and relevance of stakeholders also can change over the duration of a project.
Yeah.
So when you are starting up, you need to talk to other guys, support of other guys, and maybe when you are closing down and trying to transform transition the product to operations. And then you have to talk with the operations guys, very detailed. But up front, maybe you talk with the business guys, the business analysts, and see what's going to happen. So what I used to do, a big Excel sheet, if you want, with all the stakeholders it's also a register of their contact address and where they're sitting and what the role is and everything, but also what their key interests are. So and key interests towards the project, but also towards something else. So if you go to an executive and have an interview, you better look at his LinkedIn and Facebook and whatever you get hands on, and then okay, he is a cricket guy, and then you better don't talk about, let's say, Formula One or whatever, So if you are unable to talk about cricket like I am, you maybe keep the sports thing out of it, or you make yourself the effort and become a cricket specialist in short time, which might be an appropriate way depending on the stakeholder what you want from him. So the point is, there are always too many stakeholders in your list, and when I was working for Panasonic in Europe, I had a stakeholder list for executives which had 350 names. 350 names. So, and I wanted to sell to all of them, and all of them, some of them had influence, and some of them fought each other. So it's Panasonic is a huge conglomerate in Europe. We have 30 plus countries. Everywhere was kind of sales company and different divisions and so on. So it was a huge network of companies, and so to understand who they are is important. So that's the analysis part. But then you also have to decide, okay, where do I go? Do I go to the automotive guy, or do I go to the spare parts guy, or the HR guy, or whatever, and then you start building relationships. And in Japan, you always try to build relationships with everybody who is important, because they might move somewhere. And you cannot engage with 350 stakeholders. That's just impossible, because you also have some project work to do or program work to do. But and that's when I started to ask the core team in the program, 5 people, that we somehow distribute that work. So somebody would be in charge of automotive, and then the action was try at least once a month to contact these guys in automotive.
Yeah.
Call them, write them an email, whatever, ask them to go to dinner, whatever, that's the kind, so that you get some information. And maybe if they don't want, that's also a message, but normally, because Japanese are very much into relationships building and into working deciding in a different way, it's important to know them all and deal in some manner with them. So this was one thing I had with the program with Panasonic, but also with other projects. You have your list, and if it's only 4 guys in that list, you definitely miss somebody.
Yeah.
So maybe a good size for a project manager to handle is about 50 names. And remember, it could also be names of groups or organizations,
Yeah.
And I remember a project I didn't run, but I mentored the project manager, and it was in Austria. And there was a CEO in Austria. It was not Panasonic; it was another company. CEO in Austria, and the leader of the working council. Turns out the leader of the working council is the most powerful in Austria. So I helped the project manager identify this, and then we did an engagement plan towards this guy, and after that, every decision in Austria was made like this, because the working council leader, he was able to influence the CEO very easily.
Exactly.
So sometimes, project management is about influencing people. Leadership is about influencing people, and you don't have to influence them by yourself, but you can ask people to do it for you, and it works.
Exactly. One other thing you mentioned about stakeholder register, where you capture all the stakeholders, as much information as you required, or not too much information, not too less information. And just be careful about what information goes there, because if that's a public document, somebody you can create some problem for yourself.
It's very sensitive, and
sensitive.
It even might be against the law.
Exactly.
If you have things like GDPR, when I talk about this project, this list, it was before GDPR. But for some good reasons, we have this kind of regulations now, and you have to be compliant with these regulations if you do that. Anyhow, in your head, what you're doing, and but you shouldn't put it on a project server where everybody could access it. If you do it for yourself in your private something, that's another story.
So the next thing they can do as the project manager is do some mapping or running some power interest grid. Another very simple tool where you have a quadrant, four quadrants, and you have the power on the horizontal and the
Yeah.
influence level at the vertical. Sorry, horizontal as the influence and power as vertical. And then you categorize them, put them, and then you, yeah, now you know that, hey, these 20 of them, happen to be high in power. And out of 20, 15 are also very much interested. Five of them are not interested.
Yeah. Yeah.
By doing this categorization, you can prioritize your engagement with the stakeholder.
Yeah.
What level of engagement you need for the 15 people who are also interested. And these five people, they are not interested negatively, they are maybe negative. Your engagement will be very different to these five people because they are negative and you want to try to convince them to come to the other sides one way or other.
Well, yes, that's a good point. If you have gathered all the stakeholders and then you do a thorough analysis, and you can use this kind of tools to give some priorities. But I always say, but it's also a matter of timing. So, for instance, I had one project where I also mentor the project manager, and so as it comes, they have some changes and they have some problems, and they run out of budget. So the budget estimate was clearly, they need 10% more. And the sponsor was very supportive, but he said, I have no chance getting that money this year. So what are we doing? We can't get this 10% more on a budget. And then, they looked around and they found one stakeholder who was not involved at all in the moment, who was not important at all, who fell through all the analysis. But, now he had a small interest in that project, but he has a lot of money. And the engagement with him was targeted towards get his money to fund my project, and that succeeded. So he became a co-sponsor, if you want. He became a funder, a co-funder, and also a co-sponsor. And there were some tweaks made, so the project would more support his benefits too. Yeah, but there are situations where you might look at your stakeholders and say, okay, who can help me here? Even if he's not on my list on the top, maybe you find somebody who can get to the top.
Exactly. And look, by doing this analysis, simple things, you can find out, hey, these are some difficult stakeholders. What I have to do? You come up with these engagement strategies. And you actually have maybe, as we talked in stakeholder engagement plan, and this is how I'm going to engage with them. This information I need to provide them, and maybe I take them out of for dinner or something as something, or maybe team building activities, something you need to work out maybe. And if it is a group, and you talked about, the group can be a stakeholder, and they are getting your product and they are negatively impacted. And believe it or not, if they are negatively impacted, somebody or these people can become a roadblocker for you. You need to find out how can I engage with them, how can I get their confidence in the project. Maybe there's lack of information, lack of interest, or maybe they hate the sponsor, they hate the project. Whatever it is, you have to, as a project manager, have to spend enough time to understand them.
Yeah,
understand their concern. And sometimes we assume. I have to talk about this. Sometimes we assume they are by birth, from their birth, they're like this, or they are made, they generalize them. This kind of people always like this. You categorize them in that way. So then before you start engaging with them, you already judge, you start judging them. And that's where you start putting the boundaries in between.
Yeah.
So, when you are going to work with, a group of people, don't go with some thoughts or prejudgment. See, find some friends in that, and maybe you can navigate through within that, and you can build a good relationship with them, and you can change the direction of the project altogether.
Yeah.
So stay open, and learn from the other people. And one thing you mentioned earlier, understanding the interest, what they are interested in. if you are like
Yeah.
CEO and you keep talking about talking to employees, hey, we're going to make this much money and the share price has gone up by this 20% and blah, blah, blah. Now employees are looking at each other. I say, what is in for me? We have been working hard making this success. He's not talking about the salary raise, bonuses, or something like that. So when you're talking to these people, you need to cater their interests, what they're interested in. Talk to them, hey, we made so much profit, we're going to give you, everybody will get, so much, 10% of the bonus or something. That's a more pointed discussion rather than talking about shareholder, about this growth,
Yeah, yeah.
company gone from this point to this point, blah, blah, blah. For them, it's blah, blah, blah.
Has to be interesting for the people you're talking to, what you're saying,
Exactly.
you know.
And that's where you generate their interest they're interested to listen to you
Yeah.
and, they will recognize you as a leader. Otherwise,
And for that, you have to recognize also that first you have to listen, to them to understand more what's their interest. So I had the strangest things, and I don't want to talk about details here. Private information coming out of executives, because they don't have anybody to talk to. They are in a hierarchy and they fear their boss, and their peers are fighting them, and their employees are hating them. So somebody from the outside comes who has a kind of listening mode. They might open up, and you get to know something that you really don't want to know, and it might not even be beneficial to your project and sales and whatever. But yeah, you get to see everything what humans are.
Yeah. So look, Thomas, this is a very interesting topic. We can keep talking whole day about this, and I think we have to be in time in the interest of time. And if everything, if you have, do you have any last minute, last point, something which you want to explain or talk? Then
Well, I think we crossed a lot of aspects of sponsors and stakeholders, and I gave some examples from my project life. And I only can say, if you as a listener are interested in this kind of topics, if you struggle to get your situation right, and do the right thing, talk to a mentor.
Yeah, and very important for you to not prejudge the other person. Listen to them, talk to them, understand their perspective, because their view may be different than your view. Understand that, and try to think up from their point of view. As that's where emotional intelligence comes in between. What they are going through, what is the impact of this? When the project is successful, whether they will see this positive or negative. So when you start seeing from their point of view, you can empathize with them, and your engagement level will be very different, and they will respect you. And believe it or not, some projects become successful just because you as a project manager has utilized some techniques, basic technique, emotional intelligence, engagement, looking after your stakeholders, talking to them, listening to them.
Yeah, you're totally right. Project management is a people business, and it's the same project and the same tools and methodologies and whatever, led by two different project managers will have different results. Exactly. Because it's a people business.
Exactly, and this is, you correctly mentioned, same work can be dealt or handled by two different project managers. You're going to have very different results.
Right.
Anyway, so that's another topic for another day. And I think that's enough for today. Thank you very much, Thomas, and bringing your experience and expertise in this topic. It's always, good to learn from you and having this discussion. And I'm sure people, when they listen and analyze this information, use this information in a day-to-day project management, program management, they will also benefit. The organization also benefit. And today we also talk about the sponsor. If somebody is playing a role of sponsor, they can also benefit from the discussion we had. Yeah. And if somebody looking or want to discuss more about this topic or anything else, I know you play a role of a mentor, and I play a role of mentor in my, PgMP, PfMP space. You have a special area of project management. So people can contact us, and we are available on LinkedIn, and reach out to us, and bring your typical, your personal requirement. Hey, this is what I'm going through. My organization going through. It's my individual level, my operational level. We can support you in any way.
Okay.
All right, great. Thank you very much. And Thomas, see you again with a new topic and new discussion.
Bye bye, Dharam.
Bye. Thank you. Take care.